Hey, what's up everybody? BDL44 coming at you with another video. Alright, so I wanted to give you something in regards to the NBA because we got some games going on today and I glanced at them a little bit, didn't stare too long, but glanced. And first of all, the first two games were games that I was interested in. The second two games were games I'm not so much interested in, and I am speaking as Minnesota and Denver are going at it in game 4. Minnesota's up by 3, second quarter right now, I believe it is. So I'm somewhat interested in that series, but not so much just the same, because at the end of the day, nothing's really surprising me at all. But let's start with the ones I was excited about. First of all, the Knicks and the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers got their butts whooped pretty good. They can't score at all in this series. They just can't put up enough buckets. I think they've scored over 100 points only once in the series. It's been bad. The Knicks defense has been good, and I'm not surprised at all to see Moses McBride get some playoff time. That dude is a true lockdown and a secret weapon, a very deep secret weapon. And it's one of the reasons why I believe the Knicks are capable of coming out of the East, is because they don't have any players on their bench that I don't feel comfortable checking in the game. And when Moses McBride came to LA and played against my Lakers, he was the last one left. I was like, I don't know what that dude can do, but everybody else on this roster, I feel confident in, including Fournier and Derrick Rose. I can play them. Everybody. And there's only about 3 teams in the league that I feel that way about. The Lakers, the Knicks, and the Kings. Everybody else, I have questions about someone on your bench, or just flat out think that person probably should be somewhere else. So in this case, it's like, all right, I expect high things from the Knicks. I have high hopes for the Knicks. I know a lot of people who look at the Eastern Conference and they looked at the Cavaliers and legitimately thought the Cavaliers were a good team. And if you judge by top 5 or top 6 players on a team, and you just look at every team and you see only their top 7 or 6 players, then you have reasonable thoughts about the Cleveland Cavaliers. Because from 1 through 7, they make for a very, very difficult team to match up with. So if you're looking at that, of course you're going to have them beating certain teams that they ain't got no business beating. Problem is, I'm not looking at that, as you guys well know. And so when you consider that I'm looking at the fullness of their entire team, because not necessarily because I have questions about whether or not their top 7 can overcome a deep field, not necessarily, but because I have a philosophy about whether or not you can physically even do that. It's not something you can will yourself toward, in my opinion, anymore. If you don't have the depth to make up for it, you're going to get worn down. That's my theory. So it's like, when I look at Cleveland, and I consider how shallow I believe they are, and I look, they only have about 7 players I feel comfortable checking in the game. After Caris LeVert, I got questions. It's one of those things where it's like, I just thought it was a no-brainer for them to beat the Knicks. In my mind, I mean the Knicks to beat the Cavs, excuse me. And in my mind, the Knicks were going to lose the first game, respecting that the Cavs had home court advantage, and then probably wouldn't lose any more games. Well, they ended up losing the second game and have won 2 straight. So it's kind of going the way I thought it would go. Donovan Mitchell has been cold in this series. You know, cold in this particular game. You know, Garland was freezing in the game before that. It's just one of those situations where they can't seem to get enough going for themselves to really garner any real, you know, movement in this series. And it just comes down to them not having enough to really go at a team like the Knicks, who have plenty, far more than they need to win the series, in my opinion. So that's kind of what it is. You're dealing with a Knicks team that's healthy. Julius Randle is trying to find his way, so he's getting healthier as the series progresses, coming off the ankle that had him out to start the series, if I'm not mistaken, or was hurt at the start of the series and played anyway. I think that's how that went. But yeah, that, you know, when you have a healthy Mitchell Robinson down there for the New York Knicks, he offsets that dynamic that would make the Cleveland Cavaliers special. As I once told you guys, you know, they have those centers down there in Allen and Mobley. That length is supposed to disrupt teams and make it impossible, but it doesn't if you have players that are capable of providing that same dynamic. New York does. You know what I mean? With Mitchell Robinson fully healthy, they definitely have that dynamic. So you can't knock them off with that. And because of it, You look at that back of the bench, and you see them doubling the talent. You see Obi Toppin breaking out at the same time. Even though Quentin Grimes had to miss the game with some type of injury, it didn't matter because that depth was able to overwhelm, the Cleveland Cavaliers, because they could still check in Moses McBride and stuff like that for defensive purposes. It's just obvious to me the New York Knicks are much better than people think in the Eastern Conference, and probably will finish this series off in 5. So I'm not surprised to see what I see there. I just don't think Cleveland is even in that conversation with the Knicks when you consider the bench issues that the Cavs have. They just don't. They're not even in their conversation. So I'm sticking to my Cavs going home in 5 pick. The Knicks are just a better team now. So moving on from that, we're talking about Golden State and Sacramento. That game was phenomenal. I really, really genuinely think Sacramento may not win another game in this series, though. I think that although history tells us that the Sacramento Kings have won in this series at home, and the Warriors have had issues winning on the road all season long. So until the Warriors prove they can win, on the road, then it's going to be kind of difficult to see my initial pick still manifest. But I did have the Warriors winning the series. It did look bleak. For a while, I saw something different, and now I see something different than that. I think my initial pick is strong right now, and the reason why is because if this series continues to drag out, what you're seeing is not only a Golden State Warrior team with more experience start to figure out the Sacramento Kings team that doesn't really make many changes, even though they have many options. It's not a whole lot of changes they're going to make with their starting 5. So what you see is what you get from them. And it seems to me that the Golden State Warriors at home have found some things out that works for them. And then you couple that with Gary Payton getting healthy about a second. And now they found something with Draymond Green coming off the bench that works for them in this series specifically, offensively. And they have more offensive talent on the floor at one time. It's the same thing I say about the Lakers in regards to Vanderbilt and Troy Brown and some of the other players. You want two-way guys on the floor at all times, especially when you're going against a team that's full of two-way guys. And so that's what Sacramento is. When you're going up against them, you know, if Draymond Green isn't hitting buckets, it gets to a point where he could be a bit redundant down there. Well, not redundant isn't the word, but he could be a bit limited, depending on how well the offense is moving with him down there. So, that's the #1 offense in the league, Sacramento. You got to be able to go all in being able to score points. And getting Jordan Poole on the floor, with Gary Payton, Andrew Wiggins getting healthier as well as the series progresses, even though he was never hurt. His conditioning is right where you want it to be. As the series gets better, further into it, he's just going to get more and more in rhythm. And that's what you're seeing, him getting better. He is getting better as the series progresses. And they now have Draymond playing better off the bench. That's what you saw was him hitting shots in the first half. And so my thing is, my suggestion to the Golden State Warriors initially was to try to run, more of what it is that makes them score the ball. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I said they're probably best if they have Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins, Steph, Clay, and Gary on the floor at the same time. And they've been doing that a little with that. They've been putting Kuminga in there as well. And I just think that the Golden State Warriors have kind of tweaked themselves in a way that attacks the Kings specifically. This is why they're the champs, because at the end of the day, they've been here so many times. There's no scheme that they don't know. And while Mike Brown knows them for sure, they also know him just the same. So it's kind of hard for for Mike to walk in and just beat the Warriors, even though he knows what they're going to do. Stopping Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, it requires you to be able to do the impossible, not just understand what's coming at you, but somehow be able to stop it. So I think with Steph hitting shots the way that he is, Jordan Poole now stepping into his game the way that he is, Klay Thompson also in shape and healthy and fired up. I mean, you just see them hit some shots down there and run some plays down there that was just unbelievable. Kevon Looney, you got to give him his credit. He was impactful, very impactful. And so when I look at this team, the Golden State Warriors, I legitimately believe that they're in a position to close this series out over the next 2 games if they continue to duplicate what they've done with these adjustments, and Mike Brown doesn't make some adjustments as well. At the end of the day, he's going to have to continue to use more of the team. It's one of the things that I've always said about every team. When you have all these bigs like Metu and Lin and all these guys, if you don't throw them at the Warriors to try to wear down Looney, he's just going to keep coming at you. That dude doesn't get tired, and he doesn't make too many mistakes, and he doesn't miss any games. So when you can count on a steady piece like that to contribute on both sides of the floor, it really doesn't matter if Draymond Green is out there or not. He's going to be there, and he's going to create problems. And that's what the Warriors are able to do when the Kings continue to only throw Lin and Sabonis at him, when they have so many other people that they can use. And so that's where I think the Kings have gone wrong. You just got to keep fresh legs on a player like that who's rarely going to wear down. And so that's a very important situation when you're considering the Golden State Warriors, is how is their big situation being affected by what it is that you're doing. And if the answer is it's not, then you lost. That's what we learned last year in the playoffs specifically. It's not necessarily about stopping the 3. It's about stopping their defense. It's about making sure that you understand that they're going to attack you in the paint. As guys like Wiggins continues to get more and more in shape, he's going to be putting more and more pressure on the rim. So will Jordan Poole. And so this is a situation where now that you understand these players starting to get better and better equipped to go against each to play with one another once again, as these lineups are starting to get synergy once again, we understand that they have championship experience from last year. It isn't just ancient experience with Stephen Clay and Dre. It's these guys, even Kuminga, who had playoff experience last year, who were in that environment, who have plays that they've run in situations like this. And Sacramento just doesn't know themselves in that way yet. They're a very good team, but they've never been here. So you saw their inexperience kind of rear its ugly head down the stretch of the game in the last 3 minutes. They were just making decisions that just didn't help them. But even so, you saw the trait that I was telling you guys about in regards to the Golden State Warriors and how frivolous they are with the basketball down the stretch of basketball games in the playoffs. We've seen this in the biggest moments where they just throw a ball behind their back or toss the ball off their head or little stuff like that that ultimately hurts themselves down the stretch of basketball games. I don't understand that trait within this team. Errant 3-point shots that they take with 17 seconds to go on the shot clock and stuff like that. Golden State Warriors have been able to get away with a lot over the years because of their shot making ability and because of the togetherness of their bigs that contribute on both sides of the floor. If they didn't have those things working in unison, some of the mistakes that they've made would have cost them, like they will cost many teams if they were to try to do those things themselves. You've got to take care of the basketball, especially when it matters most down the stretch of basketball games and playoff situations. And I've seen for the Golden State Warriors, probably around the 120 mark, just pass the ball directly to the Sacramento Kings. Some of the interceptions that were made down there, Malik Monk, and the way that he's been contributed in that way, catching that errant pass with one hand. I mean, you just got to ask yourself, will those things hurt the Golden State Warriors when it need not to this year? Because when you go up against some of the talent that's out there, some of that is not going to work. Down the stretch of a game in the playoffs this year, with who you're going against in the Western Conference this year, some of them dudes that they were doing this against, they were in the East. And some of those guys are in the Western Conference right now. These are the people you're going to be seeing in the playoffs. You can't throw possessions away this year. I'm telling you right now, that is going to rear its ugly head when they need it not to, and it's going to cost them this season. They got to shore that up, because they've been able to hit shots for a long time and do a lot of things, but they do have some holes in their lineup, particularly with their size. So if they're not going to, take care of the basketball and value every possession and understand that just because they've been here a million times and been able to get away with something a million times does not mean you're going to be able to get away with it on this particular occasion, they're probably going to lose. They're going to lose probably to a team like us. To be completely honest with you, you can't toss the ball away like that against the Lakers. I'm telling you right now. I've been watching my team all year long. Anthony Davis is going to cause plenty of problems for you. You do not need to be giving us the basketball. And so this is something I'm looking at, jumping ahead of myself. I do think that the Golden State Warriors are in a position to just use their experience and ultimately finish off the Kings. But they got to prove They got to prove they can win in that building. And if they do not win in that building in the series, then by default they will have lost the series. So that is a very important nugget, given their road woes. But you know, that's really what I got to say about the Golden State Warriors. You were looking at a game today where the inexperience of the King was costing them, and then the just, you know, careless attitude of the Golden State Warriors was costing them. And both teams were hitting shots like crazy, and it was extremely entertaining. But as a Laker fan, I'm very happy that this series is extending. I don't want either of those teams to have any rest going into the next series. So that's what I got to say about that. Also, the game that happened after that, the Celtics and the Hawks. Did not watch a single second of that. The Hawks, I just don't know what to say. They have the same problem that I think some teams have when you believe in the old idea that you need to shrink your bench in the playoffs. That's what's hurting them. that old idea that I need to use only 7 or 8 people, even though I have 16 capable ones, it's what's hurting that team. It's what's hurting them, because what makes them so good is the fact that they have pieces like AJ Griffin, that they have pieces like Johnson, that they have pieces like Capella, that they can just rotate all over the place. And what they're doing is just playing all their expensive people. Like Trae Young gets all the playing time, DeJounte gets playing time. You look at Collins, he's not playing well, but he's getting playing time. It's like, no, you need to be moving the players who are playing well into more prominent roles in Atlanta, and you're just not seeing that. They're doing minutes mentality, as I always talk about with my Lakers, where they've put, you know, other things in regards to player cachet and individual things and agent games. They put that in front of the strategy that's going to help them win. And that's what I'm seeing down there. Some variation of that nonsense. Because at the end of the day, they're one of the deepest teams in the league. And the only way they were going to beat Boston is if they came to Boston in waves with plenty of different rotations that involve some of the young players that they just didn't utilize. You know, talk about wearing people down. It's the only way you're going to do it. A team like Boston does not want to dig into their bench. People don't want to hear this about the Boston Celtics, but they only go about 9 deep. After about them 9 players, you're going to be playing people you do not want to play. People are going to be getting cooked. People are going to be getting ate up, who are going to be fouling a lot. And it's like, if you don't utilize your team when you have more talent than them in that way, then you never actually wear down their stars to expose that bench throughout the course of a series. And that's what's happening. Boston's not being forced to play any of those guys. They're only seeing 7 or 8 guys. They're going up against Atlanta's top 7 or 8 guys, and they're better than Atlanta's top 7 or 8 guys. That's as simple as that. They're better than Atlanta's top 7 or 8 guys. So if Atlanta don't jump into that bottom of that bench and utilize some of those players they got to throw those different looks at the Boston that Boston wouldn't otherwise be able to throw at them, then you got no chance. You're asking for Derek White to just clamp up the other guy. You know, and that's exactly what's going on right now. You got Marcus Smart and Derek White clamping guys up. And then you got, you know, more or less in the paint, Robert Williams and Horford and Tatum clamping people up on the other end. And then, of course, Brown and Tatum going to eat. So it's one of those situations where it's like, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch that because Atlanta's in the Stone Ages. You know what I mean? They're in the Stone Ages. I hate to say it, but for me, it's like if you're not operating a certain way and I know you have enough, I'm just going to be irritated by that as a fan. I don't even want to see that personally. It's like, you know, no. The Atlanta's one of the deepest teams in the league and they don't know it. So, as a result, talented players sit on their bench, not getting valuable playoff experience, while players who are tired they've been leaning on all season show exactly how fatigued they are in the playoffs. And they get beat by a naturally more gifted, top-heavier team. And it's just very predictable. And I got some rest instead of watching that. And now we move on to the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets. And that's a game that I think could be very spirited because Minnesota obviously has a lot of scrappy players and they've been through a lot. And the journey to this point has been extreme. But at the end of the day, they ran into a Denver team that's only getting better by the second and has a style of basketball that I'm starting to see kind of is comparable to a team like Miami in the sense that it doesn't really matter who's on the floor so long as they're running their style. And another thing that they've picked up, which is really key in these playoffs, is the defensive tandem of Bruce Brown and KCP. And those two players are so gifted defensively, and they're so capable of locking guards up that they can create a lot of problems for these teams that have these little special guards like Steph Curry, De'Aaron Fox. You know, unfortunately enough, though, they're not on that path. We are. So they don't have to see anybody like that until another round, after the second round. So this is really a situation where I'm looking at them and I'm saying, okay, they're able to use that to knock off guys like Conley. You know, they're creating problems for Anthony Edwards, even though he's going absolutely nuts. What I'm seeing there is when their shooters and their starters sit down, they got a chance to go in with this defensive lineup, including a guy like Braun, who's also going to do the same thing. They just have some really, really key defensive lineups that they can use on top of the overall, you know, Jokic-led, you know, catch-and-shoot type system that they have. With some of the best catch-and-shoot players out there, including KCP, who really does well in those situations, even though from what I understand, he's not having the greatest year in that way. So when I look at that team, I say they got a lot of two-way guys that are really dangerous. And then they got like a secret weapon on that bench by the name of Thomas Bryant, who I know how efficient he can be on the offensive end. If they decide to call on him, if he has one of those 31-point, 15-rebound games, that could actually be the difference. Now, I don't know that they'll actually call on him, but he can win you a game 5. I know that. And so that's that's how I look at this Denver team. I just say, you know what? Even though I didn't have a whole lot of respect for them going into these playoffs, now that I've seen the style of play that they've thrown at the Minnesota Timberwolves, I think that style, if they stay healthy, can make them a very serious contender in these playoffs, especially looking at the path that they're on. If they have to run into a depleted bench like Phoenix, which I don't think is much better bench than Cleveland is, I think Denver can really run that style against that Phoenix team and give KD a run for his money. You know, KD and Booker are so talented and so gifted from possession to possession, you can see them overachieving even though they don't have that bench that they may need. They may be good enough to just wipe out everything in front of them so long as they can keep their wind, especially with Chris Paul being able to shoot jump shots open all night long and Torrey Craig shooting like he's Chris Webber or something. So these are things that make the Phoenix Suns look like a viable candidate to come out of the West, even though they don't have that bench. But my thing is, they're going to run into a Denver team that is probably going to catch them off guard because it's a well-oiled machine. And Jokic is such a high-volume offensive talent. So it's going to get to a point where I think they're going to get worn down. Once they got to start putting certain players on the floor, Phoenix in that series, I think it's going to really expose how difficult it is to play championship ball when you don't have a good bench. You're going to see that in that Denver-Phoenix series. I'm assuming the Clippers are out of here, even though Westbrook's been playing some of the best playoffs Westbrook ball of his life. I just don't think they have enough without Kawhi and PG to really make any noise in that series anymore. I think that's over with. But, you know, given the fact that the Timberwolves still clawing, who knows how that game is going. Maybe they can keep their series alive, but I don't think the Timberwolves can win the series in any way. I think that's pretty much over in 4 or 5. If they don't win this one, Denver will win the next one. So that's kind of how I'm looking at that. I'm just skipping ahead and I'm saying Phoenix, Denver. You know, it's going to be interesting to see how Devin Booker handles the pressure of that Bruce Brown KCP tandem coming at him, while knowing that Murray and Porter can match him bucket for bucket. And who is guarding Jokic? Because I don't trust Ayton at this point in that way. So I just like Denver all the way around in that series. I think that series can go about 7, though. I didn't go 6 or 7, but that's only because I have that much respect for KD and Booker's, you know, talent. They're that dangerous in these playoffs, especially when they're on the floor at the same time. So that's what I see there, man. That's exactly what I see there. And then, you know, you got to ask yourself, where is the Western Conference on the other end of that? Have the Lakers worked out their circumstances? Did they somehow get knocked off by the Memphis Grizzlies in this series? Now, I personally think the Lakers are going to win this series. Maybe I'm just a fan. You know what I mean? Given what I saw from Ja Morant, maybe if I wasn't as much of a fan, I might be a bit more leaning toward the great comeback for the Memphis Grizzlies, because at the end of the day, this series does have to shift back to Memphis. And the Lakers did not look very, very impressive in the second half of that basketball game yesterday. Game 3 was a great start, but a terrible finish for the Lakers, and it's just where is their heart type of thing. You know, when you look at Denver, you're not asking where's their heart. They're out there, everybody's focused, they're all running. You look at Philadelphia and how quickly they got rid of the Brooklyn Nets, they're not playing around. Their heart's there, they're ready to go. Like, these are things that I'm looking at, you know, and I'm just saying the Lakers need to be a little bit more intent on displaying a certain level of killer instinct. It's not enough to just play awesome, so to speak. You got to win these games in ways that make your opponent respect you, and I don't know that the Lakers are doing that. So that's my critique about the LA Lakers. I just think they're showing themselves to be a bit soft in these playoffs in comparison to some of these other teams. And just because I'm a Laker fan and pay a close attention to the team and talk to the team every day doesn't mean that when I zoom out, I'm not going to be completely and utterly objective. You know, I just don't see a team that's mentally as strong as some of these other teams. They're more talented, much more talented. But as it pertains to whether or not they're going to come in and be ready to kill, the Lakers will be ready to do a beautiful symphony and dance for you. But at the end of the game, if you're strong enough, they may bend. They're just going to bend. And that's a concerning thing when you consider the type of killers that are out there, Murray and KD and Fox. I don't think you can get away with this. Steph Curry. That's the problem with my Lakers. That's the problem. So hopefully they can take that from me. If they're listening to me, they can take that from me and be offended by it and do something about it. Because I'm telling you, soft is the word. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. I'm saying that as an observation in comparison to the other energies that are out there in regards to the teams that are out there. They're not as talented as the Lakers. They're not. A lot of teams ain't as talented as the Lakers. But they're coming in a bit more assertive, a bit more certain, and a bit more intent on eating. You know, intent on eating rather than just being pretty out there and all that. So that's what I think. That's really what I think out there. I think the Lakers, they scream, they bark a big bark, but the bite, I don't know if the bite's very hard. I don't know if the bite's very hard when you consider after how well they played to start of that game, they only won by 10 points, and John Morant walked away with 45 points, 13 assists. His numbers are way better than I thought they were too, by the way. His assist and rebound numbers, I shortchanged him big time. He was way better than I thought. So that just speaks to the problem. That speaks to the problem. And so I don't think the series is over. I'd like to think the Lakers are going to win the next game at home and take this a 3-1 lead. But I do believe they'll have a dogfight. I think that Memphis feels very confident going into this game, and I'm very confident they're not going to go, 2 for 25 or whatever the crazy shooting was to start that game, probably ever again. So that's really what I got to say about my Lakers. I'm just not too excited about how they've been behaving overall. Not too excited. What else is going on out here? The Bucks and the Heat, that's one of the most surprising series for me. But I think that when you really look at it, the Milwaukee Bucks are a good team, but they're not a great team. Because at the end of the day, they're so Giannis-centric. He's going down with the back injury, and they really can't overcome, Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and just an overall well-oiled machine. As we talked about with the Denver Nuggets, they're the ones I was referring to. It doesn't matter who's down there. They're going to play well, and they've been together for so long, even though I don't think these players are overly talented. They know one another a lot better than a lot of teams that are left in these playoffs. They've been through wars, haven't gotten to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. With these same guys, Vincent and Martin and, Strus. I mean, this team has been together. And when you remove Tyler Hero from the situation, you're calling upon Duncan Robinson to get more involved, and he's more than capable of doing big things. He just hasn't been trusted. So now you're entering him. He has fresh legs. He's going crazy. Unfortunately, Victor Oladipo's prayers out. His knee, once again. I saw that live, too. I just didn't turn on the camera. But, that was just really tough to watch. We know what the journey's been like for him, and we know how hard it's been to overcome and try to make it. But, he's giving it a hell of a career, man. I don't know that he'll play again, but it's just one of those situations where you see his teammates and how heartbroken they were at seeing his injury. They knew what it was as soon as it happened, which was really just sad, just seeing the whole thing live. You know, Victor Oladipo's been through so many devastating leg injuries, and he's been such a fantastic defensive player for so long. You just saw so many missed opportunities throughout his career, and if you follow his journey, he's just been robbed of so much. It's almost like Brandon Roy. You know, he's been robbed of a chance to really display exactly how talented he is. I think back at the OKC situation, as soon as they traded for him, KD bounced. It's like, man, we got a chance to win a championship. What do you mean? I just got here. Like, it was that kind of thing. And ever since then, it's just been one thing after another. The contract situation with Indy, him turning down the money, and then getting the injury that ultimately kept him from being able to get the money that he was hoping for. It was just, you know, it's so much sadness there. But at the end of the day, Vic Owens made an impact on the league. He's played good ball for a lot of different teams and made his money. He made some money in this league for sure. So I think Vic Lowe has a fantastic career in music ahead as well. So I don't know if he'll want to make a comeback in basketball after this injury. But with so many leg injuries, I just don't know if it makes any sense for him to do so, to be honest with you. I just don't know. But prayers out to him for sure. I think they'll miss him in these playoffs, but as I said, you know, they're a pick and plug kind of team. And I do believe that just means more playing time for guys who are more than capable of playing well in their rotation. So Miami and Milwaukee are in a weird spot because Milwaukee, I don't know how close Giannis is. I'm not paying that much attention to the series, but if he does miss the next game and Miami does win that game, we're talking about 3-1 series. Then it starts becoming a situation where you ask yourself, if you're Milwaukee, if this back is bad enough for him to not play in any of those games, if he's not ready for Game 5, or throwing him out there so that he can save you in this series, is that a risk to his health for next season? And if so, is it worth it, or should you just kick the season? That's one of those things that's like, Miami could put a lot of pressure on Milwaukee to make an organizational decision with Giannis Antetokounmpo if they go out there and win this next game. Now, if he's healthy, scratch everything I just said. If he's able to go and he's just a second away from feeling better, which is likely, then they scratch what I'm saying. But if this thing is as bad as it looks, maybe it's in their best interest to just sit him and just let this series play itself out. I don't know that they necessarily lose the series. If he does sit, you know, they put up a good fight against this team, but they are down. At the end of the day, Miami is shooting the ball well and playing some good defense, and Jimmy Butler and those guys are not slowing down, even though they've lost Tyler Hero. So one would think that the Heat is so depleted that even if you go down 3-1, if Giannis is 100%, you could win 3 straight against this team, and that'll be it. But obviously, they're not toying around with his back if they've allowed him to sit these playoff games. So it's like, you don't have to sit there and tell them that they shouldn't be toying around with this series as it pertains if he can play, he should be playing. I don't ever have to do that with Giannis, so I wouldn't. So it's one of those situations where it's like, look, that back, obviously I'm to assume that they're serious about that back. He's serious about that back, and it's not 100%. I'm not sure we're going to see him return these playoffs. It's essentially what I'm saying to you. If he ain't down there for the next one, I'm not sure he's coming back for any of the others, especially if Miami wins. Now, if his team wins, they tie up the series and scratch that. But you're looking at a situation where they're down 2-1 to a depleted team, but they're depleted themselves. And I don't think they can afford to go down 3-1 with this Heat team playing this well. You know, with Duncan Robinson and Jimmy shooting this well. You know, I don't think they can afford that. So the Eastern Conference is in a world of trouble as it pertains to the Milwaukee Bucks. Anybody thinking the Milwaukee Bucks was going to save the Eastern Conference from having to deal with the Celtics coming out of the finals again or some type of, you know, upset, I think it's coming. I think those who just assumed that Milwaukee was going to win, I think y'all in for a disappointment if this back doesn't allow him to play in Game 4. If this back doesn't allow him to play in Game 4 and the Miami Heat win this game, it's gonna tell me that back is bad enough to where it could potentially start to linger throughout the playoffs. Essentially what I'm telling you. Even if they find a way to win this series. Going into that Knicks series, having to bang up against Julius Randle and all those bigs they got topping. Robinson. I don't know, man. I don't know, because I got to make sure I'm looking at that correctly. They are seeing them next, I believe, Milwaukee and the Knicks. I think that's how that goes. And then the Celtics would be seeing Philly. I think that's how that goes. I'm pretty certain that's how that goes. And if that's the case, y'all know how I feel about the Knicks. Y'all know how I feel about the Knicks. So I don't know that the Knicks don't beat the Bucks just off the strength of their bench if they use it all correctly. You know, obviously Giannis is such an imposing force, and the Bucks are more than capable of doing things without Giannis. We saw that. I mean, they got more than capable players, but just are they actually enough to win a series like that without Giannis? Or with half of Giannis, with Giannis missing maybe two games in the series or something like that? I don't know, man. I don't think so. To be honest with you, I don't think so. They're barely able to compete with a Miami team without Giannis. How in the world are they going to compete with this New York team without Giannis? So that's really what it comes down to. I think they can compete some without Giannis, but they're more like the Brooklyn Nets. You see what I'm saying? That's who they are without Giannis. They're the Nets. That ain't going to get you nowhere. They got swept. So that's kind of how I look at Milwaukee. It's looking crazy right now. It's looking crazy with a 2-1 deficit. It's still a lot of series left. Giannis could very easily come back in Game 4, win that, and then I feel great about them winning the series. And we've seen him come back from incredible injury-looking things, where his leg bent all the way back, and he came back and scored 50 for the rest of the series and won the championship. But this is 2 years later. This is a different situation. That backfall created different types of problems. And they're taking their time bringing him back, and it's costing them in this series. So I don't believe in Miami. Y'all know I don't. But when all of their players play this well, you got Kyle Lowry healthy. It just poses a situation where matchups can make it weird. And now you're looking at a situation where maybe the Miami Heat go from a team that I said should blow it up to a team that's in the second round with a chance to go up against the New York Knicks, their arch rival, which I think would be real fun for the NBA. You talk about Sacramento, LA in the Western Conference potentially, and New York and Miami in the Eastern Conference. I mean, it's a return to rivalries for real, y'all. So I don't know if that's possible. Obviously, with Golden State now firmly back in a position to take the series back over there, maybe we accidentally missed that, but I'd love to see that. As somebody from that era, those are real rivalries from my childhood. It would be great to see that. But we're a long way away from that, especially if Giannis comes back. So we just got to keep our eyes open to see what his health is like for the next game. So that's where my head is, man. It's a lot to look at in the NBA. Of course, we're talking about the Clippers and the Suns. Again, the Clippers have been so very impressive with Russell Westbrook playing this well. He's been hitting shots left and right. And I knew he would get it together to some degree because they have more shooters over there in the Clipper land. And, of course, they're just overall better team with him only eating up $1 million of the cap as opposed to $47 million of the cap, which I never will let any of y'all forget how much that actually represents in terms of talent around him. And the Clippers have plenty of it, even without Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, because they're constructed to succeed without those two. They were built that way before they even got there. So, to me, the Clippers could still win a game in this series. Or another game in this series, rather. They could still get this thing to 6. In the event that depth circumstance still rears its ugly head in regards to the Suns. At some point in time, I expect the Suns to start showing a little fatigue. Guys like KD and Booker, they're going to be leaned on a lot. Ayton, they're going to be leaned on a lot. Craig, how well can he continue to shoot? Is he going to continue to be like that? Or is he going to come back down to earth? And so these are things that I have to ask myself in regards to the Clippers. They have capable shooters. They are capable of scoring 20 threes and shooting 23s and hitting them all. That kind of thing in a game. I've seen them do spectacular stuff this season without Kawhi, without Paul. And so for me, I'm just poised to think that the Clippers are going to go back to Phoenix and steal yet another game with Russell Westbrook being so very intent on playing well. Now, I'm not expecting him to be able to continue to sustain the shooting that he has been. But if he continues to show the defensive upside that he's been doing, and you continue to see guys like Bones Hyland step forward, you know, Eric Gordon shoot the ball the way that he has been, Zubac has to step forward, I think they could steal another game from this Phoenix team. Even though, I gotta be honest, Booker and KD in a closeout game is not something you want to see if you're the Clippers. So I might have to temper my enthusiasm in regards to the Clippers when I consider just how real that is. But all in all, even though Phoenix has a strong home court and the crowd is going to be into it, it's going to be crazy, I just feel like this Clippers team, without their stars, has already proven to me over the last 2 years, even though they've interchanged a lot of pieces, they've proven to me, Ty Lue and those guys, that they tend to respond well in these situations as a team. Now, granted, I'm the same guy that told you Russell Westbrook has tendencies that cater to losing. Turnover issues, missed shot issues, selection issues, things of that nature. But at the end of the day, with the way that they've been able to work with him and the way that Ty Lue has handled business, in regards to using him, I think this team has one more win in them. One more win in them. And then I think they'll go home in 6. But I think that's about how I feel about the Phoenix Suns team, is more so than I feel about the Clipper team, reflected in that. I just do not like what they have right now. I don't. I think they're Cleveland-esque, and I just think that they're itching to get exposed. And I don't know who's going to do it, but a depleted Clipper team, unfortunately, is just not in a position to get it done. But I do think they can get one more. I think they can get one more. So that's what I'm throwing out there. So that's what I gotta say, man. That's really my thoughts on the NBA right now. I'll go back over there and check out the score in that Minnesota game, see if they can keep that series alive. They were up by 3 when I started the thing about 41 minutes ago. So yeah, that's what it is, man. I hope everybody is enjoying their Sunday. I'm gonna get a meal in my tummy and listen to this a little later as well. Thank you all for checking out BDF 44, and I'm out.